Who else was up? Okay.
Hey, cousin Sharon.
There's a delay on this side.
Hey, child.
Hi, Chalice.
We're gonna get started soon. Hopefully some people will join. What's up, Todd? Houston's in the building. So we got Connecticut on the check-in, New York on the check-in, Houston's in the building. We're waiting for a few more people to join and then we'll get started in a minute. What's up, Big Greg? Hartford's in the building. We're gonna get started in a minute. So we got New York on the check-in, Hartford on the check-in, Houston on the check-in. New Britain. Chell, you know how to host a watch party?
She's putting up.
You have to hit the share button in the bottom and it'll tell you to host a watch party.
Hey, Rosa.
Got Connecticut in the building. Okay, so you ready to get started?
Sure.
All right, so for those of you who don't know us,
I'm Nydia.
I'm Julian, and we are
All in the family.
And what this page is about is, first of all, this is our 30th year together, and we've been teenage parents, and we are teenage parents that we consider to kind of be somewhat successful and kind of made it into continue to try to crush some stereotypes. So today's topic is being a minority in corporate America. And if you're Hispanic, if you're African American, Jamaican, some of this you're going to be able to relate to. I'm just going to tell you guys right off the bat, this is my personal experience. These are my observations. And most of these come from the state of Connecticut, and most of it is the Hartford area. So I'm not sure about the rest of the country. I'm not sure who all can relate, but I'm just going to tell you guys from my point of view from the Hartford area. And she is going to tell you...
Same thing, my point of view. We grew up in Connecticut, so most of my experience is government worker, since I've been working there since I was 19. So I'll just get started?
Yeah, you can go ahead and get started.
So I had to think about this a little bit when we was talking to Julian. And growing up, I lived in Manchester, and I can say I was the only Hispanic female in my whole elementary school for the full 6 years that I was there. So a lot of things, probably when it comes to, you know, maybe if I'm being discriminated against or someone saying something to me, I kind of have a one-track mind. And a lot of things probably either go over my head or I just don't even put any focus to it. But I could give you a little bit of my experience. I think that I was pretty lucky to be able to work in the government at a young age, because the government has a lot of rules and regulations in place so that people are not discriminated against. But you know, I can tell you a few of the experience that I've had or things that have been said to me along the way. Some of them could be, you know, I was hired as a bilingual, started off as a clerk, a DC, and, you know, it's okay to talk to our clientele in Spanish, but when you're talking to your friends or your coworkers in Spanish, people don't like that. So, you know, there have been a few times where I've heard grumblings or someone has told me that I shouldn't speak, you know, to a fellow coworker in Spanish, and I didn't listen. I probably kept doing it, and, you know, I feel as though this is my first language, and I had to learn English along the way, so I do speak a lot more English now than Spanish, but you know, I definitely like to speak Spanish. Some of the other things that I was told is that, you know, my facial expressions, I'm emotional, I'm loud, I need to use my inside voice, which those of you who know me, my eyes and my facial expressions have a mind of their own, so trying to take that down a notch is a little difficult. We do use our hands a lot, we do get emotional, we do get excited. So that, you know, on that end, let's see, I have some notes.
While you look at your notes, Thelma's watching, so we got more Connecticut in the building.
So one of the other things that I experienced, and there are some of my coworkers are out there, is Spanish was my first language, and I had to learn English. However, in learning English and being in a school that's predominantly, or in a town that was predominantly Caucasian at the time, you're talking back in the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of my Spanish kind of went away, and so I kind of had to relearn it. And I have experienced some, I don't know how to say it, some by my own people, they have kind of like talked down to me, or, you know, made fun of how I speak Spanish, or they'll ask me questions like, where are you from? You're not from Puerto Rico. You don't talk like us. But yeah, I'm trying to help them. And I would always want to say, well, you don't speak English and you understand me, so I'm trying to help you.
And that happened at work?
That happened at work quite a few times, because I guess, I speak my way, I guess. I don't always speak professional, or not professional, I should say. They always say the Puerto Rican language is a little bit like a slang. So, I may not speak proper Spanish, but I was able to help them with their claims. I was able to help them with what they needed. So I have seen, I don't want to say racism, but I have seen some little bit of it on that side from my own people, or, a lot of the other things that we get. Oh, you're light-skinned, or, where are you from? Just things like that. But, when I started out, I told you I worked in government for 24 years. I think that I've kind of been sheltered, not sheltered, but they have a lot of things in place, rules and regulations, where discrimination is not tolerated. They have a lot of diversity stuff out now. So every month, if it's African American month, if it's if it's Hispanic Awareness Month, I might not be using the right terms here. If it's Pacific Asian Month, our HR department always sends stuff out to us. They always make us aware of what's going on out there. This is the month that we're celebrating. So they encourage us, or a lot of offices that I worked in encouraged us to kind of bring that to light. Bring, let's have a cultural day, or let us know how you guys do something, or, we would bring food in to celebrate our heritage, which I think has taught a lot of people, about us, or I should say me. We've had African American, we've celebrated that in the office too. So that's from my perspective.
So right off the bat, you think the government is more diverse, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
I think starting off, because I started in 95, there were not a lot of Hispanics that I saw, and I'm only talking about Hartford, Connecticut area, that were in management. But over the years, there's been a lot more diversity and a lot more, a lot more push to promote Hispanics, African Americans, those that want that opportunity.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, so what we'll do is, I guess we'll get into my piece, and then we'll circle back and we'll see if she has any advice for any people that are like her coming into the workforce, and any recommendations that she can give. So first of all, I'm just going to say like this. Again, just like she said, I'm telling it from the Hartford, Connecticut area, my experience in Hartford, Connecticut, where I worked in corporate. I haven't worked in corporate in Baltimore. I worked in federal in Baltimore, okay? These are my personal observations, and these are the type of things that, I noticed going on when I was in the workplace and when I arrived in the workplace. So right off the bat, let me just say this. Being a minority in the workplace is bigger than me. In my opinion, is bigger than me. It's about paying it forward for the next generation. It's about paying it forward for the next minority that's going to come into the workplace possibly. It's about setting that example and crushing the stereotypes that people have about minorities in the workplace. So again, from the last live, I believe I mentioned that my mother and my grandfather, they both marched and went to jail with Martin Luther King. So not only is this marriage that you see, this union part of Martin Luther King's dream, me having an opportunity to work in a workplace is part of his dream. The drawback is maybe because of what my parents did, that I kind of understood that I almost had like some type of obligation to crush stereotypes, if you will. So one way that I crushed stereotypes was to go into corporate America. And as I was getting my degree, going back to school and then going into corporate America, you know, it was just one of those things that I definitely worked my ass off to get there. Okay, nothing was given to me. I worked my ass off to get there. I mean, I'm talking, our second child was born. I'm up 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get my education done. Thank goodness that the baby was a baby, because I was able to do homework and help feed her at the same time. Because like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing homework and then I have to go work a full-time job. So let me reverse and go back and just say, the universe has a way of preparing people for the future. Let me just say it like this. And I believe it was the first or second live, I mentioned that from my background, I was raised in the projects. While I was raised in the projects, they had this thing called Project Concern. And Project Concern, what that is that's when they take somebody is in the hood and they put them out into an area that's supposed to have a better school system. And normally it's like taking a minority and then you put them into a school that's normally, they're trying to maybe call it desegregate the schools. And it's supposed to be safer. You're supposed to be able to get a better chance at education, get a better chance at life. So my mother had enrolled us in there, and that was like from the time I was in first grade, from first to third grade. So I was, at that point, the only African American in all my classes, okay? Then from third grade, we moved from that situation to a place in Connecticut called Bloomfield. And Bloomfield had a lot of faces like mine. When I got to Bloomfield, I noticed that it felt like it was easier for me to excel in Bloomfield. And you know, some of my friends that I made in Bloomfield, you know, it was just more comfortable for me to do homework and get to know people and navigate and go out and do things that I wouldn't normally have done in Canton, because it just seems like you just never get that comfort when you're alone. And I'm going to keep saying alone, because at the end of the day, there is a certain amount of loneliness that you feel when you are a minority in the workplace. So after going to Bloomfield schools, I went to Manchester schools. So I went from being comfortable to being uncomfortable again. So in Manchester school, I was the only African American in a majority of my classes. So here's the trick. The trick was, in Bloomfield schools, like I said, I was doing exceptionally well, okay? I was on a roll all the time. I get to Manchester school, I'm not seeing faces like mine, and all of a sudden they have me in these high honors classes because I did exceptionally well in Bloomfield. So when everything transferred over, it just wasn't the same. So I started going downhill again in in Manchester, I'm sorry. So what ended up happening in Manchester was one of the schools that if you weren't on a roll or if you weren't with a certain clique, and believe me, the teachers knew which cliques were cliques, the guidance counselors knew which cliques were cliques, and I was in the clique that the guidance counselor would come into the room and tell me right off the bat, don't even bother to go to college. I was told basically to just give up, okay? So that didn't happen. Fast forward, went to school, busted my ass in school. And when I was in school, I noticed that the degree that I was pursuing, I was still like the only African American. I mean, and it wasn't like I was stupid in school, because I knew when I got to college that I was no longer stupid, because I had people cheating off my papers at this point now. So after graduating, putting my resume out over and over again, I finally get a job in corporate America. I get to corporate America. The way that I got into corporate America is I took a test. So you're coming out of college, they want you to take a test, so they kind of make sure that you have a clue as to what you're going to do when you enter their company. So I took a test, and I did very well on the test, and I had 6 interviews that I had to go to one afternoon with 6 different areas of that company. So after 6 interviews, I got offered 2 positions to choose from. So I had to choose one of 2 positions. So I chose one of 2 positions, and I'm thinking that I did, like I said, I did exceptionally well on the test. I thought I did exceptionally well in the interview. And then they handed me this paper. This paper was called, what I call it, a WOTC, W-O-T-C. So people in the government may not be familiar with what a WOTC is, but a WOTC is a work opportunity tax credit. And what that work opportunity tax credit is basically saying that as a company, they get a tax credit for hiring minorities. So I had to sign a paper saying that I'm a minority. So now not only am I just a minority, I'm also a tax credit for this company. Okay, and I'm not trying to sound ungrateful, but I thought the reason why I got there was because of what I had to offer. I thought I got there because of my value in the marketplace. I did not think that I was going to be considered a tax credit. So for a long time, that was one thing that I kind of felt like I was signing my soul off. I didn't feel like I was like going to a place that wanted me because I had the skills and what it took. So one thing that I noticed when I got on the floor in the workplace is I would be on this whole entire floor, a floor of 1,000 people, 1,000 plus people. And there were more Indian people from India, and I was the only black person on the floor. There were no Spanish people on the floor. There were there were, of course, there were Russians, there were, and of course, some Italians and some, I guess if you want to call them regular Caucasian Americans. But I was the only black person on the floor. When I circled the floor, I couldn't find another face like mine. So I'm in this world, walking on the floor, wondering who's going to be my mentor, who am I going to go to lunch with, who am I going to relate to? Again, feeling the loneliness. I just felt like I couldn't figure out like what was the problem. I know that in my background, the people that I hung around with were African American. When I walked outside the building, there were tons of African American, but they weren't inside that building. Okay, so and I still can't figure out what the problem is to this day. I don't know if it's a lack of ambition for African Americans, or I don't know if African Americans are trying and just not getting the opportunity. Okay, and maybe I could have been one of the lucky ones. But at the end of the day, you do get a feeling of loneliness, and you do the best you can. You also realize that, like I said in the beginning, is the opportunity is always bigger than you. It's not just about my feelings. It's not about Julian's feelings. I got to put on this mask every day when I go to work, if I like it or not, that I have to make sure that I'm paving the way for the next generation or the next person that comes in. So no matter how I feel, no matter what I hear, I have to still play the game, because I need to pay, because it's bigger than me. This whole being a minority thing is bigger than me, because at the end of the day, stereotypes need to be crushed. People need to get along, and we need to have more people at the table, a more diverse table. And I think that's where the government makes a big difference, and especially down here in Baltimore. So like Nini was saying, is and now that we work together in the government, I see a huge difference in diversity. I mean, I see people at the table that look like me. Now when I talk and I'm at the table with people, I know my voice is being heard. Now when people address each other, it's out of respect. And I'm gonna tell you, at one of the jobs that I had in Connecticut, there was so much disrespect to the Indian people that I really couldn't stomach it. I mean, and these Indian people were some of the best, most kindest people that you ever want to meet. These guys, because I was a lead person, they would be there in the middle of the night, 24/7, do whatever I asked. And I remember being on the phone with one of the guys late at night, and I'm talking to him about, how does he feel about, the workplace? How does he feel about America? And one thing he said about me, he said, Julian, he said, there's just something about you that's just different. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, you're just not the typical American. You're just different. And I'm just like, I'm not really understanding, other than I treated them like people. And I can tell you, when I left that company, those Indian people approached me and they made me feel like a rock star. Okay, they made me feel like a god only because of the way that I treated them like people. And other than that, you know, half of them I didn't even know their names, and I apologize for not knowing their names. But at the end of the day, it was my objective just to treat people like people. I can tell you, for me, in corporate America, there's been times that I would get on the elevator with people, and some of these people I would actually be on projects with, and they wouldn't talk to me. They would just sit there and act like I didn't exist. There were times I would pass by people in the hallway, and they just walk by like I didn't exist. But when they need something, of course I exist. So it was a lot of this trying to figure out, is it me because of the color of my skin, or is it just people are just assholes? So it's a lot of trying to figure it out, especially when you're in a lonely place, because you're wondering where your people at, you're wondering why people treating you a certain way, and you just really, it's just so much stuff that you're trying to figure out, that you're trying to get to the bottom of. So, you know, at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. Anything else? So what advice would you give to a next generation Latina coming into the workplace?
I mean, I would probably just tell them that they have to be themselves. And I mean, it depends on the situation, I guess. You know, you have to be yourself sometimes, I guess, and sometimes, you know, depending on the job. I mean, if you really need the job and they're asking you to kind of tone it down a bit, then, you know, you may have to conform to that. Not saying that, you know, you're going to be a faker, or, you know, might not be the best advice to give, but if that's a job that you really need at the time, you know, you may have to do that and then look for other work in the meantime. And Chellis has a question. How did you handle managing other women, because women be catty and lots of emotions?
Okay, child.
So I was a supervisor for about 8 years, and there were some days that it was rough, trying to manage different personalities in the office and trying to get people to work together. And I think part of what helped me is that if someone came to talk to me, I would talk to them right then and there. I would look them in the eye. You know, I would be honest with them. I would help them. Being where we work, you know, there's a lot of people in upper management. I guess that's anywhere who feels like they don't want to roll up their sleeves to help. And I always did that. I was always a technical person at work. So I think I got a lot of respect from people because they would see me helping. They would see me, you know, answering the phones, helping the public up front. If they had a difficult case, I was always there to help them. So I think that helped me. So, you know, if maybe someone had an issue or a problem at work, or I needed something to be done, when I came to them and approached them, you know, to talk to them, to ask them to do something for me, you know, or a workload or something, I think they were very responsive to that, because they knew, you know, I was in there, I was doing the work with them. I wasn't just, you know, coming to slap a bunch of work on their desk and say you needed to do this. But I think sometimes you just have to be real with people. I think what I struggled the most with being a supervisor is how to talk to someone and not just say what I want to say. So my daughter's asking this question, and she can tell you that I'm a very real person. If I don't like something, I would just tell you what it is I don't like. I don't sugarcoat it. I'm very tough. So I think part of my job that was the hardest was how to talk to people, or how to communicate with them and say it in a nice way. So I'm hoping that I was able to do that. And I can tell you that, you know, you're always going to have someone who's having a bad day, and sometimes you just have to walk away from them and, you know, talk to them the next day.
Did we shout out Cousin Patricia? I think she joined.
Hey, Patricia.
Hey, Cousin Patricia, New York is in the building.
Chalice, did that kind of answer your question?
Chalice, you could just hit like if it did.
Oh, she's asking you a question. Dad, was each private company you worked for the same kind of culture, or was one a little better?
Excellent question, Chalice. No, they had a couple different cultures, and I'm going to tell you this. Let me just make sure that I'm clear on some things. Is along with the loneliness, you do get a handful of people who will accept you, and those are the people that I think graduated to a more diverse mindset. So you will get a handful of people, and most of those handful of people are probably my Facebook friends, and also, you know, friends that I have on text that I would go to happy hour with. Those are the people in that culture that they would be accepting. So there's a chance if you look at my friends list and you see those people, that's the handful of people. But there's I'm just going to say that there was one that was a little bit better than the other, but I'm not going to say which one, because people are going to have to make their own decisions on that. But I think one was better than the other. Like I said, there was one in particular where there was a lot of Indian people, and some of these people treated these Indian people what I would consider to be unfairly, and, you know, personally I didn't like it. And, you know, if you guys knew me in high school, I was one of the people who kind of stood up for the people who were treated unjustly, you know. So, you know, and I was just one of those people that I just didn't like when people were treated, no matter if you were a nerd, no matter what your color was. If people didn't treat you right, I was one of the people who kind of stood up for you. So, any other questions? What's up, Tracy? Do you have any questions?
Anybody else have any questions? Do I have any questions for you? How do you think about, well, you probably answered it. I was just going to say, everywhere we go can have a lot of nepotism, I guess. So do you feel that you do feel that you're in a better place?
There is some nepotism everywhere. So,
So what is your advice for the next generation?
Okay, so my advice for the next generation is, like I've been saying, this whole thing is bigger than you are. When it comes to being a minority, no matter what you do, no matter what steps you take, every day we have to crush stereotypes. So for the next generation, you have kids, your kid's gonna have kids, and if you don't have anything that you can give them, at least you can give them is a good last name. Okay, so at the end of the day, for me, it's more about crushing stereotypes, and it's a lot about making a way for the next generation and appreciating what the previous generation gave to us. So when you get there, if you choose to go into corporate America, when you get there, just remember you might have to put on the mask. You know, I had to put on the mask for many years. I couldn't really say what I wanted to say. I mean, I would hear guys over the wall talking about gang violence. I'm like, what do these dudes know about gang violence? They know absolutely nothing about gang violence, but I can't say what I want to say, and I just hear the ignorance coming out of their mouth about something that they don't know about. So, like I said, my advice for the next generation is always remember we have to pay it forward. It doesn't stop with you. It's not just about you. It's bigger than you. It's always going to be bigger than you, okay? And people are always watching, okay? Not just, and I'm talking about the old folks. I'm talking about the grandmothers that are out there getting ready to retire. They're going to approach you one day, and they're going to tell you about yourself, okay? There was this 80-year-old lady that retired. She approached me on her retirement day, and she pulled me aside, and she told me about myself, okay? And it was a positive way, but at the end of the day, people are watching, and we owe it. As for that 80-year-old lady, I know she's seen some stuff in her days, and I know that she can see a difference when people walk into the room and change things. So you got to keep in mind that 80-year-old lady, she's seen a lot, and for her to mention me in a positive light, to me it means a lot, because I feel like I'm doing my job for the next generation, and I'm encouraging the next generation to do their job for the next generation. Because at some point, even though it doesn't happen overnight, but at some point things are going to change drastically. Like I said, our marriage is a sign of progress. Me, where I am now, even in federal America, is a sign of and the federal government is a sign of progress. Doing what I do, the input that I provide. I mean, this is just some things that being at the table with faces like mine is a sign of progress. You may not see it right off the bat to the point that you want to see it, but it's a sign of progress. And the only way we're going to progress is if we all understand that this whole thing is bigger than us. You can't be selfish at the end of the day. So
Chalice is asking, how do y'all handle work stress in marriage? Does it ever affect us? So I don't think we really have work stress in our marriage. I think that I think if anything, if we're having a fight or something, we do drive to work in the morning and we do drive at home in the evening. So we got to make up pretty quick that night if we're going to look each other in the face the next day. But as far as work stress, I think we don't really have too much stress. I think that with me working in the government for so long, and then some of the things that Julian has a question about as far as our work or things that we do, I can kind of explain that to him and help him to understand how it works. Whereas if I'm having a bad day, he can kind of understand and relate and just tell me, you're bigger than that, or, let it go, or they're missing out, So how do you think we deal with it? I don't think we have a lot of work stress.
Well, for one, we go to the gym, right? So that's one of the first things we do is, after work, we do hit the gym. Usually, because we work together now, the topics are, I can relate more to her than I could before when I was working. She was working in the government and I was working in private. So now that I can relate, I don't know, is that better for you now that I can relate to some of the issues that you used to talk about? Because I used to tell you before that I was just like, y'all full of shit in the government because y'all got it made compared to private, right? So, at the end of the day...
Well, do you feel my pain sometimes?
To an extent, yeah. I admit it now. I do admit it now. But, so I don't know if it helps you that I understand now, that I can have that type of empathy now, but...
Yeah, I think we don't really have a lot of work stress in our marriage, Chal. Your mother's asking if we love each other.
Yeah.
Come on, Thelma.
Yeah. All right, what's up, Tracy? What's cousin Patricia? Do you guys have any questions about any other lives? I know, I think Thelma was asking when was I a stripper from the prior live.
No, we don't want to go into that.
You don't want to? Okay.
No, Rosa's out there. Rosa, do you have any questions? You're my fellow coworker out there. Chalice, I don't know. Oh, Chalice did hear that story.
What's up, Cousin Keenan? Cousin Keenan's watching. New Yorkers in the building. So if you guys have any other questions about any of the other lives, was I born?
Yes, you was born.
Chell, you seen a lot. So, Chell, and I think you know a lot, but we just don't. We just try not to let the kids know what we go through at work. So, what we normally do is when we come home, we try to tone it down to an extent that we don't talk about anything at dinner. We might talk about it before bed sometimes, especially if I'm annoyed. So
It depends. If Julian's annoyed, like he said, I have to hear about it all the time.
yeah, but and one thing about me is I'm passionate about what I do by nature. I'm a Scorpio. You know, I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my work. I feel like, you know, if you know, it's like Biggie said, you should only make moves if your heart is in it. If my heart is not in it, then I probably shouldn't do it. So we don't talk about it all night, Chell. We only talk about it for a few minutes, and then we go to sleep.
A little longer than a few minutes.
I can't answer your question because your daughter-in-law told me not to answer your question, Mother. Maybe I can take it offline. Maybe you can call us after the live session. So, I guess we'll end the call. But if you guys have any questions, any comments, any topics, feel free to reach out to us. Like I said, you know, and like we always say, this is to let people know that if two teenage parents can make something of themselves, then the topic was being a minority in corporate America, cousin Keenan. So, you know, if two teenage parents 30 years later after getting together, having a child in the teens can make it, then we can continue to crush stereotypes in every way, okay? So, you know, if you guys have any questions, if you guys, you know, if people are struggling in their marriage and you think they might need some type of guidance, if you think kids need mentors, that's another thing. Especially to the fellas watching, find a child, mentor a child. Find a child, mentor a child. We cannot continue to let our children be lost. So if anybody has any, you know, like I know my cousin, Seeds of a Father, Kevin is up in Springfield. He does some mentoring with kids. You know, I have my own kids, but I'm willing to mentor kids. I mentor some of my ex-co-workers. At least they say I'm their mentor. You know, I think it's just me being me. So I don't know if I'm just speaking and dropping some jewels in their ear, but, you know, it's just me being me. So, but if you guys that are watching, Father's Day is coming, don't just think about being a father to your child. Set the example. Always walk in the light, setting the example of a man so these kids know what to expect when they become men. So they can see, especially, you know, African Americans and Latin men, everybody's watching. I said it earlier, the old people are watching, the young people are watching. It's bigger than you, it's bigger than me. At any given time, is always bigger. You know, like I said earlier, your parents probably couldn't give you a lot of money, but at the end of the day, they tried to give you a great last name, and you got to continue to make your last name great. Continue to push and make that last name great. Continue to make society great. Continue to let people know that stereotypes are getting crushed. We have no boundaries. We have no limits. We do anything we want that we set our minds to. You know, so when we have in these sessions, it may sound like we're being boastful, but at the end of the day, we're trying to show that we came from a place where a lot of people were shitting on us. A lot of people were saying that we couldn't do it. But now, where we are now, we're probably doing better than those people who kind of counted us out for the most part. Mm-hmm. So.
Your cousin joined.
Which cousin? What's up, Brandon? Bloomfield's in the building. Connecticut is in the building. Thanks for joining, Brandon. So if you guys have any questions,
any comments, any topics, if you want to join in on the live one day and give us your experience, let us know.
Okay. So you want to do that? You want to interview somebody? You want to interview? You can find a topic and interview somebody.
Yeah, why not?
So another live session that I'm going to get into, and I think, you know, I think my buddy Eric had the topic up, is when it comes to kids in college and kids in school, and that's one thing that I wanted to get into, and I think it's going to circle back to some of this being a minority in corporate America. It's going to circle back to school. It's going to circle back to some of the student debt that we talked about. So I think a lot of this is going to come full circle. And I think it's going to be interesting because we're living in a time where things are moving extremely fast. And if you are a parent that is not up on it and you trying to teach your kids the old way of doing things, that's going to be a problem. So,
your friend joined.
hey Srini. That's Srini. Hey
Okay.
Srini. Srini, I just got finished talking about you, buddy. So you're going to have to go back and listen to this whole live session all over again. I'm pretty sure you'll know which part is about you. Okay? Between you and a couple other guys from the old team.
Chelis, who were you saying to interview? Because I thought you and your sisters were going to do a session too. She must be typing.
She must be typing. She types faster in the text. So again, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us, and we love you guys. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully we're bringing value. You want us to interview our kids? Okay. We can try that.
Yeah, we can.
We can try that. We'll have to bribe you guys. But again, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys are finding value in this channel. Hopefully you guys understand where we're coming from and what we're trying to do. Hopefully you guys start sharing the page, share the lives, comment on the lives, get at us if you have any questions, and we appreciate you guys and we love you guys.
Thanks for your support.
Yes,
we
thanks
love
for your
you.
support.
And let us know what you want to hear.
Okay. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.